Hi, my name is Sherry Cress. I'm a 30-year cancer survivor, second-time honorary speaker, and 26 years with the American Cancer Society Relay for Life. My story begins in February of 1990. My first symptoms were fatigue and anemia. That didn't send out any red flags to me or from my obstetrician because I was pregnant with my fourth child and have been anemic most of my life. The fatigue was getting a lot worse, and I was sleeping 18-hour days and trying to raise a family. I would take our 8 and 6-year-old son to school in the morning. I would get home and I would put a videotape in for Patrick, our 2-year-old son, and he would lay on the sofa and I slept and he watched the movie until it was over. Then he would wake me up to feed him and put another movie in. I would go back to sleep. I would sleep so much that my mother would call me to make sure I was awake in order to pick up our children from school. At the end of February that year, my husband and I were going on a trip, and just before we left, I found a lump in my neck. I didn't think much of it. I had a cough, and people get swollen lymph glands. I started to have severe itching at this time. I just assumed it was because of the winter and my skin was starting to get dry. I knew I had a prenatal checkup when we got back and may have swollen glands. What would be done? But while we were gone, I found a second lump in my neck. I don't know why, but something came over me. I knew I had cancer and I was afraid for the baby I was carrying. When we got back, I went to the appointment and we told the doctor about the lumps in my neck. He said he wanted me to see an ear, nose, and throat doctor. The next week, I took our 2-year-old to daycare for the first time. They cared for your child for just a few hours so you could do errands. And I used it to go see the ear, nose, and throat doctor. After he examined me, he told me he wanted me to see another doctor. The second doctor examined me from head to toe, and he wrote and he wrote. I asked him, "What's wrong with me?" He said, "I either have cancer or an infection." He wanted to run some more blood tests, and I told him that I had to leave and pick up our son, and I promised to come back. I got to daycare and picked up Patrick. We went to school and got Robbie and Matt. We drove to my husband's business, and I just started crying, and I told him that I was told I have cancer and infection and we have to go back to the clinic to run more tests. The doctor ran the test and told me he was going to be gone, but he wanted me to meet with his partner and to get the results. When I came back, they told me the file and the results were lost. I broke down in tears to this doctor, and I told him I'm 30 years old. I have a husband and 3 boys and a baby on the way. I've been told I have cancer or an infection, and you don't know for sure what is going on, and the weeks are passing. We had to do the test all over again and wait another week. When we got the results, they showed I had a very high white cell count and a very low red cell count. The ear, nose, and throat doctor did a biopsy, and a few days later, my obstetrician called and told me I had cancer, Hodgkin's disease. He told me he made an appointment for the UW High Risk Pregnancy Clinic because he would not be able to care for me now. After we hung up, I cried, "Why me, God? I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, why me?" Bill and I went to the high-risk pregnancy clinic, and it was a long day of waiting, and they didn't know how they were going to treat me. I got an appointment with hematology oncologists. They did a chest x-ray, which showed a tumor the size of a cantaloupe and lymph nodes, one on top of the other, wrapped around my esophagus. That's why I was coughing. I was being strangled by nodes. They patted pillows around my stomach and did a bone marrow biopsy. I didn't have cancer in the bone marrow. but because I was pregnant, they couldn't run most of the other tests. My oncologist said since I was pregnant, he couldn't treat me with chemotherapy because the blood platelets would drop too low and I would miscarry and bleed to death because they wouldn't be able to stop the bleeding. He wanted me to give the baby up, and I told him I wanted him to find a way to keep the baby and still treat me. My doctor sent me to the radiologist to see what they could do. They said right now I had a perfectly formed baby, but the radiation that I needed in order to keep me alive long enough to give birth would result in a mutilated child, either born with leukemia or likely get it shortly after birth, and I would no longer be salvageable. I will remember those words for the rest of my life. But maybe that's what I had to hear to what I had to do next. We drove to my obstetrician and he said, Sherry, this is the first time I would say it's for the life of the mother. I didn't want to hear that. I wanted this baby, but I knew time was running out and I was going to die with my baby or maybe have a chance without him. I told my doctor, please don't let them tear this baby from me. On April 16th, 1990, the Monday after Easter, I was 5 months pregnant. When Bill and I arrived at the hospital, the nurse said, you must be important. All the doctors have been in to see if you have arrived yet. One doctor did the ultrasound and I saw that my baby was alive. I hugged my stomach and I cried and said, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me. Then they started to induce my labor, and it was the worst labor I ever had. My baby was born dead, a little boy, our 4th son. I held him and I told him again I was sorry and how much I loved him. My husband and I named him Jonah. We told our boys before we left that Mommy was very sick and that our baby might die. They knew the cancer wasn't in my bone marrow, but the size of the tumor in my chest. They staged me at 3, 4 being the worst. My lymph nodes were growing so fast that they broke through the incision in my neck where they had done the biopsy. I could hardly say a whole sentence without choking. We went to our first treatment, and our family and friends helped take care of us and kept us fed. I received so many cards and prayers, even from people I didn't know, and through all those cards, prayers, and love, I survived. My doctor knows that something more than medicine saved me. When you just hold our hands, we keep fighting. Believe in miracles, they do come true. I ask you now, keep fighting, keep hoping, and never ever give up. Thank you, Sherry Cress.